Yes, this is blog number 6 in Photoshop. Hello, I'm Andreas. This is my cup of coffee. It's running out. We'll be looking at how to make a picture like this in Photoshop, combining what we've learned in blog number 125. 125, yes. And we'll be using the files from the folder called Photoshop blog 6. And I've put them in order so we know which ones to open first. So first off, we'll be opening the one quick selection color box. That's where they're found, color box. Or we have a user on color box where we can fetch pictures. And we're gonna put this number 1 on the background, which is called to background. We're going to put this picture on top of this surface right here. And so let's open up this picture right here. And we'll just be extracting the background so we only get the phone itself and the hand to put on top of our background. Just to be sure that we have a reference all the way through this, I'm gonna open one additional picture. You can open this one yourself. It's called finalart.jpg. If you want a reference file to look at throughout the process. So this way I can always look, am I getting anywhere close to what I'm aiming at? So we can see this hand is supposed to be located inside of the picture. Yeah, and this is just totally random. I just mixed a random photo, a bunch of photos up, and this was the result. And when you know how to do these things, you can really do this with any photo, and probably also perhaps make it look nice. In contrast to this one, which is just perhaps lacking that final touch, which will make it nice, perhaps using another font, perhaps putting in some more text, perhaps adding some kind of message to it. But okay, let's take this picture right here and remove the background. And see, some of you have a strong tendency of using quick selection all the time. Actually, on this picture it's probably better to use something like either magic wand tool or actually something like select color range. But we're just gonna stick with magic wand, and you know, it's very important that you have the correct settings set in your control menu. Up here, this one called contiguous is quite essential. And naturally also the tolerance which the magic wand is normally set to. If it's only pure white, then the tolerance can be set quite low. If it's a bunch of colors and tones, perhaps you need a higher tolerance. I've set mine to 30. That's probably gonna be fine. And actually setting this contiguous off is not gonna be good, because then I'm gonna select the inside of the phone as well. So I'll set my contiguous to on, meaning that if something is in the way, another tone, another color is in the way, it will stop selecting. So since there's not white at this edge, it's gonna stop selecting the white inside of here if I click outside. So I'll click out here, and naturally there is a small gap between the finger and the phone. I'll select that one as well. By holding down shift, so it adds selection, and click. And watch out you don't select the finger instead. Okay, so when I zoom in now, I'll notice that perhaps in some areas this selection will have some white in it. Let's see here. You notice right here, you see it has some of the original white background actually that it has not selected. So like I said when we were dealing with this child statue, always remember to either contract or expand your selection in order to make sure that it doesn't select the background pixels when extracting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna look at one of these areas where I can see a few white-ish pixels, and I'm gonna say, and you're gonna do that as well, say select, modify, and then what's it gonna be? Is it gonna be expand or is it gonna be contract?
Expand.
Yes, and why is it gonna be expand instead of contract?
You're selecting the white.
Yes, precisely, because I'm inside of the background, so naturally we want to make it bigger, so it's gonna take more inside of here. Yes, so expand, and I only think I'm gonna expand it by approximately 1 or 2 pixels. So just to be very cautious, I'm gonna say 1 pixel, like that, because I don't want to ruin the mobile screen too much, the mobile phone, because it might easily start losing too much. And you can see here there's a lot of the finger actually already gonna be lost here, but we don't want those white pixels, so let's just accept this guy getting thinner fingers. Yeah, that's actually a great Stephen King movie, Thinner, or a book if you're into books. Yeah, about a guy who gets thinner and thinner and thinner until he is no more. Okay, so in order to remove the background, if we want to remove the background, I would naturally, I could also just not remove the background, just move this item with my black arrow to the other, what happened there? Oh yeah, of course you need to select the hand, inverse, and then you could actually just move this part to the other picture so it's inside of here without actually having to extract. But I think it's quite a good idea to extract, because we're actually gonna lose some stuff we don't want to lose on this mobile phone. So it's a good idea to just remove the background to see what's actually getting lost in the process. So I'm gonna open up my layer, gonna open it up by either double clicking on it and then clicking enter, or just clicking once on this lock that was right here. This lock that was right here.
How did you inverse with the shortcuts?
Oh, that's you see inside of the menu you can see actually what the shortcuts are. So the shortcut for inverse is Shift Command I. Okay, so gonna delete this background, and then actually gonna zoom in to check if something important is lost. And you see, actually, even though we remove some parts of the fingers, it's actually looking quite nice. Oh, there's something lost down here, some of his wrist. So can anyone tell me, how can I get this back?
History brush.
Yes, the history brush. So let's take the history brush tool, set it to perhaps a size 5 to 10, and you know, when making extractions, like I've told you before, not that many times but a few times, hardness around 90 to 95% is best when it comes to trying to simulate hard edges. And a hand is a hard edge, while hair is a soft edge. So, but you would not use a round brush at all when it comes to hair. More about that when we have extraction of hair in future episodes of Photoshop. So there is just some really ugly white down here. That's probably a defect in the picture. So naturally you should actually crop that part away, but I don't want to waste time doing so. And you can actually go through a picture. I'm just holding down the space bar and just using my scrolling with my mouse, and whoa, there's a lot of pixels, and seeing if there's some area which looks bad. Perhaps you would like to use a feather value because some of the steps right here have become too rough. You see, it's really like it's a staircase going downwards. You wouldn't be able to see that as much if you use the feather value when extracting. But as I recall, this picture is quite high resolution, so even though it is, when you are zoomed into 1890% zoom, yeah, even though you will be able to see it here, you'll probably not be able to see it if you were zoomed out to 100%, and you'll probably not be able to see it on print either. That's because this is not insanely, but very, very high resolution compared to its dimensions. You see, this is actually A3 size in 300 resolution. That was image size. It's again, if you want to check where you can find the shortcuts for anything, image size is Alt Command I. But yeah, you could. It's okay if you want to do it on your own. Just add a feather value. Yeah, let's do that. So, can anyone tell me how to select this mobile phone and hand again? So I select everything that's in here.
Command thumbnail.
Yes. Hold down your command key, then click once on the layer thumbnail. Click, and then it's selected. So command, click on your thumbnail. Then you'll have your selection active again, and you can actually just say select, modify feather, and then choose. We probably need a very low feather value on this one because it is hard edges. So max, I would say maximum 3, and I'm just gonna go with 2 just to be extra cautious. And okay, so if you click delete now, something bad will happen. Boom. So of course we need to flip or inverse our selection. So again, that's Shift Command I, or just go to the select menu and find it here, and then click delete. And just before I click delete, I'm just going to zoom in so we can see what will happen when we use this feather value. I'm going to click delete now. You see, it makes a bit more transparency at the edges. And okay, so some of you will be like, oh no, we can see at the edge actually that it has some transparency to it. And yeah, so perhaps we already added too much feather value. Perhaps we'll not even be able to see it, because you notice when I put this on another when I put this on a new photo, what will happen to these transparent pixels is that they are actually just going to become parts. They are going to have this background color going through it in those areas. So it's perhaps going to seem more as if it's simulating that there's light from the background going to the edges of the phone. In worst case scenario, we'll be able to see a tree going through the phone. But I don't think that's the case, because our transparency was really low. It was just a feather value of 2, and this is a big picture we're putting. This is a big picture of the phone we're putting inside of the other. So I doubt we'll notice it. But perhaps we'll. History brush. Of course, it's quite essential that we draw these parts back. And with my history brush, I'm going to check, yes, hardness set to quite high. Perhaps going to zoom in a bit. using the history brush to redraw my edges. And perhaps I draw too much back. Well, then you can always start removing it again with the eraser. Set the eraser to exactly the same you set your history brush tool to. So I set my history brush tool to 92%, and I think I put the size to around, yeah, somewhere around 15ish. So if I remove too much, I can always redraw it. I think that's approximately fine. Gonna do it over here as well, if there's something lost. No, there wasn't. I think I'll just draw this a bit. Okay, so let's say this fine enough with this phone. Let's put this one over on the other picture, and you can do so by just selecting your Is everything okay? Everything is not okay. Everything is okay now? No? Is it? Are you okay?
Yes, but I can't. I can't make phones of
No, that's because you're not holding down shift.
Okay.
Because then you'll deselect the other part if you're not holding down shift. Yes, precisely. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps you should not contract, and perhaps you should not do all these feather things, because then you'll fall behind. Okay, let's take the black arrow, the move tool, and move this up into the other tab up here, the to background colorbox.jpg, and release it. We'll see this gigantus, really huge hand getting into the picture. Whoa. And so if you think it's too big, you can always just make it smaller, and perhaps some of you then later on will not be happy that you made it smaller, so you'll want to be able to resize it bigger again. Well, if that's the case, then what could we do to this object in order for it to remember its original dimensions at all times? Yes, precisely. Make it into a smart object. So we can do that by just right-clicking our layer where it's in, right-clicking the layer where it's in, and choosing to convert to smart object. Whoa. Did everyone manage to get the phone into the other picture? Okay, cool. So what I did again was I was located on my layer, I right-click that layer, and I choose convert to smart object, and that's with the mobile phone layer. Then when I choose free transform to make it smaller, I'm just going to say Command T, or edit free transform, and then hold down Shift naturally, so it becomes smaller proportionally. So let's say I make it this size, and then later on I figure out, oh, that's too small, but I have clicked enter already. So what would happen if it wasn't a smart object is that when I click enter, the free transformation is permanent. So these new dimensions for the hand will be permanent dimensions. So what happens when I make it bigger, if it's not a smart object, is that it will actually ruin the pixels by making it bigger, because the pixels inside of it just becomes more and more visible. You're making the squares the pixels that the picture consists of bigger and bigger and bigger, so it becomes more evident this is a raster image, a pixel image. But when it comes to smart objects, you'll notice that because I converted this to a smart object, it will remember its original dimensions. So up here it says that now I scaled it to 81% of the original dimensions. So you can always just resize it as you want, as long as it's a smart object. The downside of it being a smart object is that you cannot use any brushes on top of the layer. So you cannot start painting on this layer. You cannot paint anything on this layer. So all of these retouchment tools, clone stamp, history brush, dodge tool, blur tool, sharpen tool, whatever tool, you cannot use them anymore on this layer. Except, of course, if you double click on the smart object thumbnail, so it opens up in a separate tab where you're actually editing it as a separate picture. But I suggest not doing that, because that's for some of you, your brains will start to melt when doing stuff like that. Okay, that's just a fact. Okay, so next thing is we'll need to put something inside of the screen right here. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna make a copy of this screen. I'm just gonna select it. Like this. I just used the magic wand. The magic wand, I just took the magic wand again. Be sure that contiguous set to off. On. And then just click once on the screen. See, when you click on this screen, you can make a copy of the area by just knowing one shortcut. How do you make a copy of an area from a layer? Command J, precisely. Command J to make a copy, and then if I just hide this mobile phone for a second, you'll see that I have this white area, a copy of it. So I'll just switch on my mobile phone again. But to see that it's actually there, I just toggle Command J. I can also show you where it's located if you want. It's located in Layer, New Layer via Copy. So if you don't understand what I'm saying on the video, when you get home, at least you can check what I show in the menu then. Okay, so now we're gonna use a clipping mask actually. So we're gonna put a picture inside of this other picture, and let's just close down the picture we're not using. If you want, you can save this picture right here, but I'm not gonna save it. I don't care about it. I'm instead gonna open up my tree clipping mask. Some of you might actually want to say file place, and you're allowed to do that from now on because you have been informed what smart objects is. So you could also place this as a smart object inside of the other picture. I'm not going to do that, but we'll probably do that with one of the other pictures that we're going to place inside of it later. Okay, so this is a skull. That's from a human skeleton. Yep. And I'm just going to move this inside of the background and release. Oh, I can see I actually still have my selection going on inside of this picture. So be sure to remove that. Select, deselect, otherwise you're gonna mess stuff up. And I was talking to you about clipping masks this Friday, and I was very tired while doing so. So luckily we're gonna see something about. Was I telling about clipping masks Friday? Yeah. Okay. Super. So I'm gonna put this skeleton inside of the screen. And first off, if I would like for it to be able to become bigger in the future again, I could convert this to a smart object. So I'm gonna resize it, just scale it down to fit the screen, but on top of that I'm gonna make it a smart object. So first off, I'll make the smart object by right clicking the layer and choosing convert to smart object, like that. And then I can free transform it by just Command T or edit free transform. I'll scale it down. Remember to hold shift down while scaling so it scales down proportionally. And when I'm happy with the size, I'll click enter. And so now what we need to do is we need to get this skull inside of this white area. And since we have this white area on a layer for itself, well, I can actually tell that layer to become the clipping mask for this other layer, which is the skull. And we do that by putting our mouse between the two layers, holding down Alt, and then you'll see this icon if you're located between the two layers, and holding down Alt, this icon showing an arrow pointing downwards. This layer will belong to this other layer. Layer number 2, in my case, will dominate whatever is inside layer 3. So layer number 2 will become the clipping mask. So I'll just click, while Alt is down, I'll click, and you'll notice that it will go inside of this area. And then when I switch on the visibility of my mobile phone again, you'll see that we have a skull inside of our mobile phone. Yes. Did everyone get that? Or do I need to repeat? Cool. You can at any point move this layer number 3 with your move tool. So if you're not actually 100% happy with how it's located, you can just move it around. Just make sure you don't pull it outside the area. So we get this white box again. And so if I wanted it more up here, but there wasn't enough room, then remember it's a smart object, so I can always scale it up because the original was bigger. So I'll just Command T and start rescaling it like that, and perhaps this will give me a better version. Of course, when I move this layer from now on, this layer with the hand, the mobile phone, and the item inside the screen, I'll want to move all of these at once, because it's kind of annoying if I move this part that the other part remains in the woods. So I'll make all of these 3 into a group. I'll make these 3 into a group by just selecting them all. You can just click on the bottom one and then shift click on the top one, or the opposite way around. So all of them are selected. And then if you're using CC, if you're using Photoshop CC, you can just click create a new group. And it will put all of the selected layers inside of that group. If you're using CS6, you'll have to manually drag the layers into the group. I'm just going to call this layer phone. Perhaps phone and hand, but that's up to you. So this group is called phone. Next part we'll do is I'll just close down this clipping mask, and we're gonna do something to the background. So gonna minimize my Photoshop, and we have this one called blend texture. I'm just gonna open that in Photoshop. One second, I need to know why there's nothing called number 4. Is there one step I need to repeat? La 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 la. There we have it. Oh, yeah. Okay, forget about the melon. We're just going to do one more thing to this picture before using the melon picture. The watermelon. Okay, because also perhaps some of you will like to change the color of the skull, because right now we're talking about how can we make changes with this picture without actually damaging the original. So perhaps I would like to change the color of this this skull to being let's say purple or green or something like that. Then I can't use an image adjustment right now. If I click on my layer number 3, which has the skull inside of it, let's see what image adjustment says. It says you are not able to. So what could I do instead if I wanted an image adjustment to affect this layer? What? Yes, precisely. Use a layer adjustment. And layer adjustments, again, I'm just going to say this shortly. Layer adjustments are located 3 places. Layer, new adjustment layer. Here they are. They're located here inside of the panels, inside of the adjustments panel. And they're also located inside of the layers panel. Just down here. Create new fill or adjustment layer. Gonna click on this one, and if I wanted this to become, let's say, green, perhaps the most common thing to select would be hue saturation, because if I want to change something from one color to an entirely different color, it's most likely gonna be hue saturation. Yes, and see, this hue saturation, sometimes it will just be located somewhere where it's going to affect actually a lot of the picture. And if you only wanted it to affect the skull itself and not anything else, then it's a problem, because you see that it's affecting both background and the skull at once. So naturally you will need to put this layer adjustment inside of the clipping mask, so it's only affecting whatever is inside of that mask. So how to do that is just by, again, being located between the two layers right here, holding down Alt and clicking once. Now you see the background is back to what it was originally, and you can actually just change your hue and it will only affect the skull inside of the picture. Oh yeah. I think I want some more reds. Yeah, okay, let's say that's fine. So remember, you can put adjustments inside of clipping masks as well. Okay, so next off is the watermelon, and that's gonna be the last exercise we'll make before break, because this is me having to tell you again how to use pentool. And for a lot of you, it will take some time to get used to using the pen tool to extract from pictures in Photoshop. For others, it will just fall natural to you at once, immediately. But we're gonna use the pen tool. It's located down here. We'll need that because there is a perfect, almost perfect curve right here. And there's no other tool in Photoshop which can select curves as precisely as the pen tool. So get a habit of using that. Once you see pictures which has very beautiful curves, get a habit of using the pen tool to make extractions in those areas. Okay, so I'm not going to remove the upper part immediately. I'm probably just going to use quick selection tool or magic wand or something like that to select the upper part. But with the lower part, I'm going to use pen tool, and let's just start out doing that. First off, when using pen tool, I'll inside of my control menu make sure that it's just selecting path. You can actually tell it to select, make shapes if you're perhaps have a bad eyesight, because then you can actually tell it to make a stroke. When drawing this curve, you can tell it to have a 3-point stroke, for example, so you can it's easier to see the line you're actually drawing along the curve. So that's primarily if you have bad eyesight, or perhaps you just like the stroke to be visible. I don't know why, because you think it's easier. In general, I just would recommend using path instead of shape, so you're actually just drawing a line without any color inside of it. Okay, so I'll start somewhere over here, and some of you will want to zoom in a lot. Some of you have a bad habit of zooming in like this in Illustrator, really zooming in totally close, and then you're trying to make curves like this, and that will just look like crap when you're done, because when you zoom out then you have just a lot of jagged lines everywhere. So making a perfect curve is not making a lot of anchor points, it's making as few anchor points as possible to make long straight curves. Okay, so I'm probably gonna zoom out to around here, because then I know I can make a long curve, perhaps even further out. The problem about zooming out too much is actually when I click with my pen tool, will I hit the precise point of my watermelon? So it's kind of like an art, figuring out how far do I want to zoom in, so I can see where I'm actually working, compared to how far do I want to zoom out, so I can see that I'm making perfect curves. I think this will be fine for me. I'm gonna click at some point and just click at another point, and see right here I zoomed out too far, zoomed in too far, because right now it's starting to do this. Oh damn. So perhaps that's gonna be a bit annoying, so I would zoom out some more and try making a perfect curve. And it seems like right here that I haven't placed it totally correct, but if I release it and then just start moving with my move keys, my arrow keys, I can see, oh, it's almost great. And when you're working with your pen tool, you can always hold down Alt, and then when you go across a handle. This is called a handle. Actually, it's called a Bezier handle, but let's just call it a handle. This handle right here, if you hold down Alt when using the pen tool, it will switch to what in Photoshop is known as convert point tool. Convert point tool. So instead of having to switch to convert point tool, you could just, when using pen tool, hold down your Alt key. So I'm just gonna try finding this one again. Hold down Alt, just to click and drag actually my curve, so I can always change it later on if I'm not entirely happy with it. Perhaps like that. And then some of you will also be quite annoyed that there's this handle sticking out here. This handle right here will control your next curve, and that can somehow be often be frustrating, because you both have this handle controlling the next curve, but you'll also have the handle you're actually dragging controlling that curve. So it will be two handles controlling the same curve, and that can create kind of a weird loopy effect. You see, kind of like it's going outside the melon. So often a lot of you will want to delete this handle down here, and you'll do so by just Alt clicking on the anchor point itself before drawing the next one. So before drawing the next anchor point somewhere down here, you'll Alt click on your anchor point. In Illustrator you don't have to Alt click. That's just something you do in Photoshop. So in Illustrator you can just click. You don't have to hold down Alt while doing so. And I'll just place the next point like that. Alt click on the anchor, click and drag, click and drag. Well, that was not precise. I'll just try moving it a bit, and perhaps hold down Alt to get my convert point tool, change the handle. Let's just be happy with that. Click and drag. Oh, do I have a handle down there? No, I have no handle. Okay, I'm gonna try doing like this. I actually think I can keep that handle. I'm just gonna keep this handle down here. Gonna do like that. It actually, if you want the most fine looking curves, it's always better to keep both handles. But sometimes that means you need to readjust one of the handles. For example, readjust this handle or readjust this handle. That will make a totally smooth curve when you're using two handles to define the curve. You don't have to, if you think it's easier with this extraction, not to use two handles. Just gonna select all the way around the object when done. And actually, you could either make it into a selection by going into paths, the panel called paths, choosing it from down here, load path as a selection. But you could also just go up inside the control menu, choose the one called selection, and just click, and OK. And then it's a selection. Go inside of your layers, open up your layer, of course, because you need to extract, and delete.
Sorry, can I ask how do you make the
I just there we have it. Whoops. See, when your pen tool path is done, and your path is still active, so you can actually see that it's highlighted. If it's not, you can always select it again with the black arrow. If it's highlighted like this, you can just go to your control menu up here and choose selection, and then just click OK to the dialog box which appears. You can also do this inside of paths by clicking on this small icon down here, load path as a selection. Yes. Whoops. Remember to open it up. And with the top part, it should be quite easy to just remove that with some other tool. And it doesn't really matter if some of the melon is removed as part of the process, because we're gonna use a blend mode on this, like we did with the butterfly wing. In block number 5. We're gonna remove parts of this. Remove parts of it. I mean, we're gonna use a blend mode on it, so we cannot see if it's not a great extraction by the edge right here. I'm gonna delete that and probably just to make sure, I'm just gonna also by the edges where I made my extraction, just gonna erase. And perhaps, if I really want to be sure that it looked nice, zoom in and check, did I get everything? No, I did not. So I'm just gonna make sure I get everything. Whoop. There we have it. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, that's fine. Looking awesome. Width. Do you need more time to extract this, or is it extract? Do you have an extraction already? Yes, yes, awesome. Okay, so we're gonna move this into the other picture called to background. Gonna move it inside of that, and actually gonna put it above background but below the phone, so it's gonna be behind the phone. And right now, watch out you don't put it inside of the group, and it can be really hard sometimes to put something out of a group. You notice that I'm trying really hard to get this outside of the group, and sometimes it can be a science itself, so I'm just gonna take it out of the group, then close the group, and then move it below the group. Cold coffee is the best in the world. Yeah. Ice cold coffee. Okay, so this is gonna act as some kind of rainbow going across the sky, so we'll need to turn it around by just Command T, clicking free transform, and we got a melon sky. Yeah. Use a blend mode on it and try figuring out which blend mode works best, and depending on if you want to have some kind of horror movie background or if you want some yay happy background. If it's horror-ish, you would probably use some kind of darken up. If it's some kind of happy scene, you would probably use some kind of lighten to lighter color. If it's some place in between, you would probably use overlay to hard mix. And as I recalled, one of my preferred blend modes was pin light or difference, but difference not will kind of like make an X-ray version of it, so perhaps it's not the style you want. it will seem a bit extreme. And I think I'll just look at which one I actually selected on the original, just in order to be true to that one. Yeah, as I thought, it was pin light. Whoops. Gonna select pin light and perhaps set the opacity down so it's not affecting the picture too much. And you notice that perhaps this edge right here, when you're using one kind of blend mode, that edge will look really nice. When you're using another type of blend mode, it will look as if it stands out too much. So perhaps if you want to, you could take, just to be sure, take a copy of it, because now you want to delete some parts of it. So I'm going to take, if in case I regret, I'll take a copy of it, and then I'll just hide one of the copies and start erasing at the edge. And I'll erase with a low hardness, because now we're not trying to get a hard edge. Now we're actually going to make a smooth transition in the sky. So a low hardness and then perhaps a low opacity, so I can gradually remove this with my eraser. Yeah, and I suggest you use the next 4 minutes experimenting with how could I get this watermelon to look nice on my background. I think mine is already looking somehow fine with my background. You noticed before it looked like this, and now it has some color in it and looks kind of like a nice feature inside of my picture, if you're into that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'll just stop the video now and we'll continue after the break.